This happened in Texas. My husband and I had just moved into a new house. It wasn't a great area. Our neighbor across the road was a strange man with an energy that I felt right away was off. I soon found out he was a heavy drug user, and somehow his presence seemed to throw off the energy of the entire block. Shortly after we moved in, the place was still in boxes, and I was in the process of gradually unpacking the kitchen when I noticed this clearish thing by the floor. I don't know what it was. It wasn't easy to see, almost completely translucent, but I could make out the edges of what looked like a small humanoid form. I stared at it for a long time, thinking I was seeing things. It didn't move. I couldn't explain it. Finally, I called my husband into the room, pointed right at it, and asked him if he could see it. But he couldn't. Was I losing my mind? Now, my husband and I are both big meditators. I started a few years earlier because I heard it was good for anxiety, and I found after several months that it really did help with my sense of calm. So one evening, I was sitting in our bedroom meditating when I saw a dark shadow shape suddenly pop up in my mind's eye. It waved at me. It had pointed ears and a round head, and I got this distinct sense that it was amused. I opened my eyes, shaken. I didn't feel like I had imagined this thing. It felt completely independent of me, a separate being that had entered into my mind's eye somehow. I was alone. The room was empty as far as I could tell, and yet I couldn't shake this sense that something else was there. Then, about 3 months later, my husband came to me with something strange. He'd been meditating, and something had appeared to him. He described it exactly the way I'd experienced it, but I hadn't told him about my encounter. We hadn't discussed it at all. As you can imagine, we were both a little freaked out. It was around this time that I began to have a series of progressively more disturbing dreams. At first, these were just normal, random dreams, but the same person was appearing in them over and over again. This blonde-haired man. I don't remember his features, only that he was blonde. He would just be there in the dream, watching me from across the street, or standing in a corner, or following me through a field. Whatever the dream, the ones I could remember, he was there like an intruder. And then things started to get weirder. The dreams took on a more intimate feel. The setting shifted from random dream locations to my bedroom. I would be lying in bed, and this man would be in bed with me. I became more and more disturbed by these dreams and the strong sense that they weren't just dreams, that I was under some sort of attack. So I researched lucid dreaming so I could protect myself. I started practicing techniques I'd read about online, and finally, one night, during one of these dreams, I became lucid. The man was there with me in my bed, and I yelled at him, told him he didn't have my permission and he should leave me alone. He did not respond well. He said some chilling things to me. Essentially, he said that I belonged to him, in his opinion, and that this was potentially connected to my family line. I don't know what it was talking about, and I have the sense that it was lying about that anyway. I've come to realize that it will lie to get its way. Once I was able to go lucid that one time, it became easier, and I was confronting him again and again inside these dreams. After that, it started to trick me. At least it was trying to trick me. It began appearing as different people. An ex-boyfriend, a trusted friend, even my husband, and a woman once. But it could never get it quite right. The features were always off, or the voice had a strange quality to it, or there were things about the appearance that didn't make sense. I believe I have seen what it really looks like in flashes, and my impression is of a small man. I would say child-sized, but with adult features. Pointed ears, a long, crooked pointed nose and a very thin frame. After this, things started happening when I was awake. I'd be lying in bed, just waking up from sleep, and feel someone next to me kissing me on my neck or tickling me behind my ear. I'd open my eyes and find no one there. Another time, I felt someone pecking me on the lips over and over, the barest touch of a kiss. I realized the mouth doing it was very small, and the skin, it was really warm, almost hot. I opened my eyes, and no one was there. Another time, I was lying in bed, and I heard a voice say, clear as day, "I love you." I didn't recognize the voice. I sat up, turned on the light. The room was empty. The worst incident happened when I was in that space between sleep and wake, and I became aware that something was physically on top of me. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed it, and I felt my hand make contact with a physical being. I felt it squirming, and I panicked and said, "Oh my God," and it just slipped away. When I opened my eyes fully, there was nothing there. Through all of this, I began to notice a strange pattern connected with our neighbor, the drug user. When he would go on one of his benders, disappearing for days, coming back looking wrecked, the activity in our house would spike. I don't know what the connection could have been, but I felt it was too consistent to be a coincidence. At this point, my husband had started experiencing things too. A blonde man was appearing in his dreams, standing in the background, watching him in an intimidating way. Then one day, our neighbor passed out in his house, and somehow a fire started. He survived, but the house was badly damaged, and he had to move out. And just like that, all the activity and the dreams stopped. It's been quiet ever since. The longest stretch of peace we've had since moving into that house. I don't know if the entity is really gone, but I hope it is. I've never had an interest in Fae before this experience, but in an effort to rid myself of this thing, I've had to do a lot of research and have learned more of the older, more disturbing stories outside of American movie stuff. I just think this is a thing that lives in a different layer of reality. My impression is that this creature seems incredibly bored and obsessed with me, maybe because I see it in a vague way and can sometimes knowingly interact with it, and it finds that more interesting than it would have if I'd had no awareness of it at all. In retrospect, I wonder if it would have been better if I had ignored it from the beginning and pretended I didn't know it was there. Maybe then it wouldn't have found me interesting and left me alone. I think I may have potentially encountered other beings in that house, but I've tried to tell a linear narrative here of what I assume to be the most dangerous one. I left a lot of detail out, mainly because I think the encounters in dreams and the back and forth conversations/arguments are not healthy, in my opinion, to detail. Whatever this being is, whatever the reason for these encounters, whatever the possible connection with my neighbor, I can only guess. But I can say from experience that this world is far more complex than most people recognize. So this started on April 30th, the eve of Beltane. My husband and I were out at a park in the greater Columbus area, deep in the woods. There's this river that runs through the forest, and in the middle of it, where the water splits around this raised patch of ground, there's a small island. It has dark, gravelly soil, shale-like rock, and trees growing up out of it. We'd found our way onto it from the right bank. Now, the river isn't huge, but the forest on either side is dense enough so that once you're standing on the island, the tree line closes in around you pretty fast. My husband had gone up to the left shore path. There's a trail that runs along each bank to go check something along further. I'm physically disabled, so where he was going, I couldn't follow. He let me know. I said it was fine. And just like that, I was standing there by myself, water on both sides, trees all around, and the sound of the forest. I was just looking around, taking in the scenery, when I heard humming coming from the south. Down that way, maybe 50 feet or so across the water, there was this natural archway. Two trees grown toward each other, roots and branches framing this gap in the bank. My husband and I had actually noticed it on previous visits. We'd started calling it the fairy portal. The humming was coming from that direction. It was masculine humming, a nice voice, and reminded me of the artist Hosier almost. I hummed back just on a whim, and the voice went silent and then hummed back. I laughed and hummed back again. This kept happening. I hummed, he hummed, like we were playing a game. I moved to try to get a better look at him, expecting to wave at a friendly hiker, but I couldn't find anyone. I kept scanning the area, finally looking directly through the archway, and there, far in the distance, I saw a figure. It looked like a man, tall, unnaturally tall, I'd say, and lean in a way that didn't look quite right for a person. He had this long, pale face, sharp features, and dark hair. He was dressed in something dark and close-fitting, that's all I could make out. And I could make out that he looked like he had a bow across his back and a quiver at his hip. I heard the footsteps of my husband returning, so I looked away just for a second. But when I looked back, the man was gone. Next day, May 1st, rolls around. I spent the morning and most of the afternoon out on our patio table while our 3 small cats played around inside. I was working on some projects, journaling, processing some honeysuckles we'd harvested, making violet sugar, refreshing our home money bowl. I was out there for hours. My body was hurting a lot from the day before, and I hadn't slept much, maybe 3 hours. But I still wanted to be outside. I smoked a bit of herbal medicine to help with the pain and went back out. I want to be clear about something before I keep going. I smoke herbs semi-regularly for health issues, but I do not have any conditions that would make me hallucinate. And I feel strongly that what I saw that day was real. I was awake and lucid. I did not hallucinate this. I was sitting outside and just enjoying the warmth of the sun and vibing when all of a sudden I saw every bird in our yard come flocking to the elm tree in our backyard and just disappear into it. I mean, they were just gone. Normally, when birds go into that tree, you can still see them moving around. But this time, I couldn't see a single one. I could only hear them. As soon as this registered in my mind, I saw this small white creature at the base of the tree. Now, I need to mention something. When I take my medicine, I like to be lying down because my mobility isn't great and I get really wobbly. If I fall, I can seriously hurt myself. We're talking a 911 situation. So walking over to that tree was a real concern. But I had to figure out what I was seeing. The creature at the base of the tree, the birds, I needed to investigate. So I got myself up and walked slowly and carefully over to the tree. As soon as I reached the tree, all of the birds let out this sudden burst of chirping, and then went completely silent. No rustling, no movement, nothing. It was like they weren't there anymore. I looked around and spotted the white creature I'd seen at the base of the tree. It was about the size of a mouse, but it wasn't a mouse. I don't know what it was, but it appeared to have little nubs coming out of its head, like where antlers might grow. It had this pinkish muzzle and these wide, wide black eyes, and it was just frozen, completely, staring at me. Now, my husband and I and a few friends had actually seen something like this in our backyard before at night, but at the time we dismissed it as some kind of optical illusion. The things we'd seen had looked like mice with full antlers, sort of like miniature moose antlers, but we just thought we were seeing things, that it was a trick of the light and shadow. And yet here I was, standing in the backyard, staring at a mouse with antler nubs in broad daylight. I stepped away from it and suddenly saw something. This is going to sound crazy, but I saw what appeared to be a portal to another world at the base of the tree. It was like you could only see it from certain angles. It was the size of a small door, and through it I could see a forested prairie area with a cobblestone path leading right toward me. There was a figure, and he was walking in my direction. I kind of panicked, turned around, and started walking back to our patio as fast as I could, knowing I wasn't in any condition to run. On the way back, I tripped on some uneven earth, and my ankle went one way and I went the other. A second later, I felt two large hands with freakishly long, slender fingers catch me under my armpits and stop me from falling. I was pulled back and kind of stood up. I looked around, but no one was there. So now, really wigged out, I walked back to the patio chairs and sat down, honestly shaking because of what happened. Then, when I looked back toward the tree, I saw, as clear as day, as clear as my own hand, the same figure from the archway the day before. A tall, lean man with dark hair and sharp features. He was standing exactly where I had tripped, completely still. He had a bow and a quiver on him, just like he'd had in the forest. So in my mind, I started calling him the Archer. We kind of just looked at each other for a few minutes before our next door neighbor's kids came out into their backyard. I looked over at them and then looked back, and the Archer was gone. I was completely freaked out at this point and was about to make my way back into the house to tell my husband what I had seen when I spotted the Archer again, now standing by our fire pit. We were just looking at each other again, and I had the sensation like when you're in a dream and you move and everything feels like it's underwater. It was extremely surreal and so dreamlike. Just on pure instinct, I bowed at the waist and then turned to head inside. But before I closed the door, I heard his voice state to me with a hint of a laugh, "She who walks with 3 tiny cats." His voice was odd. It was so human, but had the tone and pitch of a wind rustling leaves on a tree. I shut the door. I don't even know what I was feeling at that moment. I just knew I had to sit down, so I walked into the next room and pretty much fell into the couch. As soon as I hit the couch, a sudden wave of delirium washed over me. I felt like I was being taken out of my body from what I can only describe as a forced astral projection. Suddenly, I was in a grand hall, and there were strange people dancing around me. It was very similar to the masquerade scene from the movie Labyrinth. And standing in front of me was a figure who presented himself as a king. He looked human, but also fey in a way that's hard to explain. He held me close, one hand holding my left hand and the other on the small of my back, and he presented a mirror and showed me what he claimed was my true form. In the mirror, I saw myself looking beautiful, dressed in a gown, and free of my physical disability. He spoke. He said, "My darling, why don't you stay with us, your folk, your kin, and forsake the human world? There's only pain and strife for you there. Here you're accepted. Look, your body." He waved his hand and a portal opened. It was the weirdest thing. I was in 2 perspectives at once. I was aware of myself with him in the ballroom, and I was seeing my unconscious body lying on the couch in my living room, surrounded by all 3 of my cats doing their cat thing. This king told me my body would not be harmed but remain in an unwakeable state. I took this to mean something akin to a coma for the rest of my life. As much as some part of me wanted to, I refused. I said I couldn't leave my husband, my friends who are like family to me, my cats, especially my husband. This seemed to anger him. He said I could choose a new husband, get new friends, stay there with them. I refused again, and that's when things got frightening. I felt suddenly unstable, like I was still in that place, but also being pulled back into my body at the same time. Then I felt something grab my ankles, like something was about to drag me by them. The king gripped my shoulders and howled at me, like something hungry. He said that if I didn't come willingly, he would steal me by force. And then I felt two large palmed hands on my face, cupping my cheeks. They felt like cold, squishy cat paw pads. Then I sat back up, fully awake, fully in my body, on the living room couch. But I wasn't alone. The archer was standing in my living room right across from me. Like I could have reached out and touched him, he was so close. Same as I could touch one of my cats. He took a step back, smiled a little, and spoke. He said, "The king," and I cannot for the life of me remember his name, "the king believes he knows what's best for all fair folk." He said I had made my decision and that it was a truly good one. Then he formally introduced himself. Again, no memory of his name. Gave himself some kind of title and a name, and named a place I can't recall. And then he said, "Now take rest and sleep. I will stand watch and protect you while you slumber." So I did. For about an hour, I believe, I drifted in and out of sleep. Each time I opened my eyes, he was there, standing across the room. But each time I woke up, he was a little less visible, like he was on a gradient, slowly fading, until finally I opened my eyes and he was completely gone, and I was fully awake. The first thing I did was grab my notebook and start drawing the two men I'd seen before. What they looked like left my memory. Even now, I can't remember off of the top of my head what they looked like without referring to the drawings I drew. I don't know what to make of the experience or what it means or why it happened to me in particular, but that's what happened. The whole experience does sound like a dream, but when I remember it as something that really happened, not a dream. And yet, it has that fuzzy dream quality to it. I can't be sure. But maybe that's what the Fae are, beings who communicate in a dream-like state. I think the Fae are beings much older than us that belong to the earth. They've been here much longer than us and live between worlds. When I was a child, I had a dream about a boy my age with pale skin, very pale, almost white blue eyes, and pointed ears. In my dream, we had an instant bond. He told me he would meet up with me in the real world. He said when I woke up, he'd be waiting for me in the living room behind the couch. So when I woke, I went straight into the living room and sat behind the couch waiting for him. But when he didn't show up, I cried so hard my mother woke up and rushed in to find out what was wrong. I told her my friend, who I called Peter Pan, wasn't there where he promised to be. This dream was so vivid, it stayed with me, and there was a part of me that always felt it had really happened, that it wasn't a dream. Years later, as a teenager, this boy, the one I called Peter Pan, appeared to me again in a dream. He was older now, still my age. It seemed he had grown up just as I had. And just like in the first dream, when I was a kid, we had an instant bond, a deeply familiar feeling like I'd known him all my life. He was tall now and skinny, and still had that very pale skin and big eyes that were so blue they were almost white, and slightly pointed ears. He was wearing a greenish-brown tunic that was clasped together at the throat with a wooden toggle. I don't remember many details other than those. He told me his true name. It wasn't Peter Pan. When I woke up, I felt that same sense of loss again. I felt like my memory of him was slipping fast, so I grabbed a pencil and drew him on the nearest surface I had available, my wall. And I repeated his name to myself. Ptolemaites, which is not quite his name, but as close as my waking brain could remember. Then I didn't see him again for a long time, until last summer when he again appeared to me in a dream. It started out as a regular dream where I was wandering around the block I grew up on. Our neighbors growing up were Irish, and there he was standing right in front of their house. Recognizing him, I ran over and we hugged. I was so happy to see him, and again I had that sense of having known him for years. We walked across the street together, talking like old friends, when a bunch of others showed up. The others were like him in appearance, tall and lean with pale skin and pointed ears. There were maybe 10 or more. I was frightened, but I also knew I was in a dream and tried to will myself awake. I couldn't. They all surrounded me, and the way they were looking at me, I knew I was in danger. There was one in particular standing across from me. He was taller than a regular person, thin, and his eyes were big and so blue they were like ice. He had short brown hair and slightly pointed ears. The others were much the same, with varying sex and hair colors. I looked to Ptolemaites for help, but he seemed frightened too and helpless. I got the sense that whatever these others were, they were above him somehow. He didn't have the authority to intervene. I had to wake myself up. I tried. What happened next, I still don't have full language for. They did something to me while I was completely unable to resist or wake myself up. It felt like a humiliation. The whole time I was trying to wake up, screaming to myself. And finally I did. My whole body was shaking. I was so frightened by this dream, or whatever it was, that for months afterward I was unable to fall asleep with the lights out. And several times I woke up in a full-blown panic attack. Whatever that was, my body treated it as something that had really happened. Now, I've had experiences with ghosts and other spirits before in my life. This was different from any of that. I've since wondered whether what people call fairies and what people call aliens might actually be the same thing, or at least connected somehow. I don't know. What I do know is that Ptolemaites was not like those others. I've encountered him many times now across many years. The others I don't trust at all. I know most people will hear all of this and just say these were dreams. And maybe they were. But I've had bad dreams before, and none of them ever hit me the way these did. None of them ever stayed with me like this. That last dream gave me anxiety for months. But the one comfort I had was that at least in the real world, in my waking life, I wasn't encountering any tall, pale, blue-eyed creatures. But then, recently, something happened. One night when I was walking outside on my way home from a friend's place, I noticed these tiny, glowing blue lights moving along the ground. They were about pea-sized. There were several of them. And I had this very strong feeling that if I followed them, they would take me somewhere I wouldn't come back from. I didn't and don't plan to if I ever see them again. And yet, I can't shake the feeling that that might not matter. That they, whoever, whatever they are, might be following me. Thanks so much for watching or listening and making it to the end of the video. And a big thank you to everyone who sent in their stories for this episode. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you thought of these stories. Any theories on what really happened or what fairies actually are? The first story in particular I found really creepy. I don't know what the connection with the neighbor might have been, but I have heard stories where it seemed like paranormal activity was related to some kind of emotional or psychological disturbance, but I don't know what the connection is beyond that. If you have a theory, drop it in the comments or just drop a comment to say hi. It really helps with the algorithm. Quick announcement, I actually just finished the first draft of my second novel. It's still got editing ahead and no publication date yet. I'm hoping I can release it later this year if all goes well, fingers crossed. But I typed the words "the end" on the first draft and I'm pretty excited about it. So for those who enjoy The Ghosts of Nothing, more fairy weirdness is on the way. We'll be continuing Nellie's story pretty much where the last one left off, learning more about the fairy world and the fairy characters you met in book one. If you haven't read book one, The Ghosts of Nothing has the same scary fairy vibe as this channel. It has great reviews, it's won some awards, and there's an audiobook version too if you prefer listening. Links are in the description if you want to check it out. If you sign up for my newsletter, Fairy Lights, you can get entered in a monthly draw for a free audiobook copy of the first one. It's free to join. Link is down in the description as well. Plus, I post fun fairy world headlines every month in a series I'm calling Fairy News and updates about my novel as well there, or my series. Now it will be a series. If you've got your own fairy experience to share, send it through the form on my website. I'd love to narrate it. A huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters, channel members, anyone who sent a tip my way through PayPal, Coffee, or the paid option of my newsletter. You keep this work going, and I seriously appreciate you all so, so much. The support options are in the description if you want to help out too. If you like this channel, please hit like, share it with someone who likes creepy fairy stories, subscribe if you're new, hype, and all of that. And please tap the bell. YouTube notifications are still pretty hit and miss without that bell. And until next time, this has been a visit from your scary fairy godmother.